It had rained since morning, thin, miserable drizzle that soaked through everything but never quite became a storm. The sky over St. Augustine's Cemetery looked like wet concrete. I stood under a black umbrella that wasn't mine, wearing a coat that wasn't warm enough, staring at the polished wood of my sister Mari's coffin. It didn't feel like her, not the Mari I knew. She used to laugh so loud it'd shake the windows. You could hear her in the next room, singing to her dog like she was on a stage. And now, silence. Just rain tapping on wood like it was counting down time. People gathered in small groups, whispering behind gloved hands. Some looked at me, most didn't. They didn't have to say it out loud. I wasn't wanted here. Mari's husband, Calloway, stood stiff near the priest, eyes fixed on some invisible horizon. Not once did he look my way. Not when they lowered her into the ground. Not when they handed over the lilies. And not now, as people began to disperse like they were late for something more important. Grief doesn't bring people together. It just shows who's still pretending. I stayed back, let them all walk away first. That's when Calloway approached. He kept his tone polished, like he was still playing the grieving husband for the crowd. "You probably shouldn't come to the house afterward," he said, not quite looking at me. "Mari's family doesn't need any more drama today." It was meant to sound polite, but it felt like a slap, cold and final. I stared at him, trying to remember if he ever spoke that way when Mari was alive. Maybe he had. Maybe I just didn't want to see it. I didn't say anything, just nodded. My mouth felt like cotton. An older woman near the back, someone I didn't know, touched my arm lightly. She whispered, "That's cruel, honey," before walking off. Her words felt like the only warm thing all day. I left the cemetery alone. The path curved toward the river, and my feet followed it without thinking. I just needed air, quiet, something other than the way Calloway's words still burned in my ears. That's when I saw his car, parked awkwardly near the old bridge that ran along the river bend. The windows were fogged, the engine was off, and Calloway was there, kneeling by the water. In his hands was a small wooden box, wrapped tight in a white cloth. He looked around once, then whispered something I couldn't hear. And then, he threw it, straight into the river. The splash was sharp, swallowed up immediately by the current and the rain. I didn't move, I didn't breathe. Just watched the spot where it sank, as if maybe it had come back up. Who throws something like that into a river? On the day of a funeral? I waited until he was gone, until the car pulled away and the road was silent again. My hands were ice. My stomach felt like stone. I remembered Mari saying, weeks before she died, that she was getting something together, just in case. Was that it? Was it something meant for me? My gut twisted. You don't make a scene at a funeral, but some truths don't wait for permission. Back at the cemetery, I paced slowly through the wet grass, my eyes scanning the ground. The crowd had cleared. Only fresh mud and trampled petals remained. Then, something caught the light. Half buried near the tree where Mari and I used to sit as kids was her wooden hairpin, the one I gave her for her birthday, years ago. She said she'd never take it off. "It keeps me grounded," she used to say, twirling it between her fingers like a charm. I bent down, picked it up. Mud clung to its edge, but I wiped it clean. I held it tight, whispering, "You promised." My voice cracked on the last word. I stayed until the cemetery lights flicked on. The wind picked up, carrying the smell of wet leaves and something older, something I couldn't name. I walked home slowly, that hairpin still in my hand, like it might explain something if I held it long enough. That night, the rain didn't stop. It pounded the roof, the windows, my head. I didn't eat, didn't turn on the TV, just sat on the edge of my bed, the silence thick and mean. When I finally drifted off, it wasn't sleep, it was a tug, dreams of the river, of voices underwater, of Mari's laugh being swallowed by the current. Sometime past midnight, thunder rolled hard enough to rattle the window panes. I sat up, heart thudding. Then, a sound, faint, a soft thud, like something hitting the porch. I hesitated. Then I stood, barefoot and cold, and crept toward the front door. The hallway stretched longer than usual. Every step felt like a test. When I opened the door, the wind slapped me. And there it was, the wooden box, soaked, muddy, resting on my porch like it had crawled its way back. I must have only been asleep for an hour, maybe less. I hadn't even changed out of my funeral clothes. My body had given in from the weight of the day, but my mind never fully let go. It was the sound that pulled me back, the faint thud I thought I'd dreamt. The porch. I sat up, heart already racing. Rain tapped against the windows like impatient fingers. The old floor creaked under my feet as I moved toward the front door. My breath caught in my throat as I cracked it open. There it was, the same box Calloway had thrown into the river, sitting soaked and still on my doormat, like it had walked back on its own. No footprints, no tire tracks, no trail of mud leading up to it, just the box, silent, wet, and waiting. I stood there for what felt like hours, trying to understand what I was looking at. I whispered to no one, either someone wants to scare me, or my sister isn't done talking. I brought it inside, laid it on the kitchen table. The wood was darker now, swollen from the river, but intact. The cloth that had wrapped it was gone. Maybe it drifted off in the current. Maybe it wasn't meant to stay. I turned the box over in my hands. It was sealed tight, but not locked. And then, without warning, the latch clicked. I didn't touch it. I swear I didn't. The lid eased open slowly, like it was exhaling. Inside, on a velvet lining that hadn't been there before, was Mari's hairpin, the one I had found at the cemetery, except now it wasn't broken. It was whole again, clean, polished. Right beside it sat a photograph, worn around the edges. Me and Mari, maybe 10 years old. We were barefoot, covered in dirt, grinning like we knew something the world didn't. I flipped it over. Mari's handwriting stared back at me. Only one of us ever truly knew the other. I sank into the nearest chair. My fingers trembled as I traced the ink. Grief has a strange way of sending back the things we never said. Beneath the photo was something small, square, and heavier than it looked, a voice recorder. Old enough that I had to squint to find the play button. I hesitated, thumb hovering, and then I pressed it. Her voice, Mari's voice, soft and low, like she was speaking through water, or maybe from beneath it. "If you're hearing this," she said, "I was right about him, about the box. Don't let him lie after I'm gone." There was a pause. A breath. I could hear her heart in the silence between words. "There's more," she said. "But not here, not yet. He knows. He knows where it started." Then static. And then, nothing. I rewound it, played it again, and again, trying to catch something I might have missed. But it always ended there, like someone had yanked the cord. I sat in the kitchen for a long time, just staring at the box. The hairpin, the photo, all pieces of something I hadn't even begun to understand. Calloway told me Mari died of a sudden heart episode. Except she had no heart condition. She jogged 5 miles every morning, ate like a monk, took her vitamins like gospel. A week before she died, she texted me something odd. At the time, I chalked it up to grief, or stress, or maybe just late-night ramblings. But now, her message read, "Keep your eyes on the river if anything happens." She knew. She knew this might happen. This box wasn't a keepsake. It was a message, a fail-safe, and it was meant for me. I stood up, pulled out my old phone, and scrolled through our last exchanges. I hadn't deleted any of them. Even the ones that didn't make sense back then now felt like a trail of breadcrumbs. She'd been preparing me. And Calloway. He'd done everything he could to keep me away. Banished me from her funeral. Threw the box into the river. Tried to erase me like a bad smudge on his perfect morning portrait. What if this wasn't just grief? What if it was a cover-up? I wasn't sure what I was more afraid of, what I might find, or the idea that Mari had known it would be me who'd look. Do I protect my peace, or protect the truth? I stood at that question like it was a line I couldn't uncross. But deep down, I already knew the answer. We don't get many chances to fix the past. But sometimes it knocks at your door anyway, and sometimes it leaves you a box. I walked through the house, looking for anything Mari had left behind. something I might have overlooked. The attic was empty, the guest room untouched. Then I remembered the nightstand. Mari's old nightstand, one I kept in storage when she moved in with Calloway. It had been shoved in the back of the laundry room, beneath a box of winter coats I never wore. I brought it out, opened the drawer. There, at the very back, was a faded receipt. Pawn shop, dated 3 days before she died. Item listed, wooden lockbox. And scribbled on the back, in bold, frantic handwriting, just one word: evidence. I hardly slept. My mind kept replaying that night. The box on my porch, Mari's whisper, the way the latch clicked in my empty house. By morning, rain softened to drizzles. I left the farmhouse before sunrise, headed for the pawn shop listed on the receipt, Mari's name still printed in faded ink. Glenn, the shopkeeper, stood behind a counter cluttered with dusty items. He squinted when I showed him the receipt. "Marisanne Rowe?" he asked, voice low. "Yes, I remember her." He leaned back. "She pawned a wooden box, then picked it up a few days later, said she needed cash." I asked about surveillance. He looked away. "Footage is long gone. Overwritten." When I offered to repay, he nodded. "Some things people leave behind. Best not to take them back sometimes." I walked out with the box cold in my palm, my thoughts heavy, wondering when Mari ever got scared enough to leave something behind. Later, I met Verity at a small diner, the kind with vinyl seats and chipped counters. She sat across from me, coffee half done. Verity's hands shook when I placed the photo and box on the table. Her eyes flicked to the voice recorder. "I didn't want to get involved," she said quietly. I leaned forward. "You knew something. You knew him hurting her." She swallowed. "I heard fights. She was scared. Donald had secret documents. He threatened her." She paused. "If you dig, be ready for what you find." Her refusal weighed heavier than any secret she'd keep. At home, I opened the box with trembling fingers. Inside, a sealed envelope, edges singed, a USB drive, a broken necklace I didn't recognize, silver and delicate. The envelope held legal paperwork titled Revocation of Power of Attorney. Mari had intended to strip Calloway of control. I stared at the necklace. It was unfamiliar but expensive looking, someone else's link to her secret life. I held the USB, heart pounding, afraid to plug it in. Before I could dwell longer, my phone rang. Calloway's name on the screen, obscene ghost of the funeral. "Join us tonight," he said. "We'll talk. For peace." I sensed the trap. "Let's not dig into what was meant to stay buried," he said softly. I agreed, not for diplomacy, but to watch and confirm. On the drive past the river, I pulled over. Rain gleamed across its surface. I stepped out, boots sinking in mud, and listened. I remembered something my mother once said. Sometimes, to protect peace, you have to disturb the silence. I pressed that memory inside me, a vow. I will disturb everything if I must. He wants me scared, I thought. That's how he controlled her. But fear works only if I freeze. I got back in the car, fingers clenched. That night, I sat at my old laptop. The USB glowed in the dark. I typed Marisanne. Nothing. Then a knock at the door. Midnight again. I rose, heart thudding. No one there. But a slip of paper pinned to the door read, "You were warned." By the time I pulled into the driveway, the moon had climbed halfway up the night sky. Calloway's house stood lit like a showroom, too perfect for a man who buried his wife 3 days ago. A valet took my keys. I walked into that foyer knowing damn well I wasn't welcome. It was all soft jazz, dim chandeliers, glasses clinking, phony smiles. The wallpaper was the same as it had been since Mari's wedding. Nothing aged in this house except the truth. Calloway greeted me like we were old friends, hand on my back too long. "Glad you made it," he said with that practiced warmth. "People were wondering if you'd come." I caught a whisper near the hallway. They let her in again? Every step I took in that room, someone's eyes followed. I wasn't part of the family anymore. Maybe I never had been. At dinner, everyone raised a glass. Calloway stood, eyes sweeping the table. "To Mari," he said, voice dipped in sugar. "May we remember her not through chaos, but peace, and may misplaced loyalty never cloud our better judgment. He didn't look at me, but the message landed. Then Esme, my mother, added low but clear, she always envied her sister. My hand froze around my fork. I didn't look at her. I didn't blink. I just let the heat rise behind my eyes. I remembered when Mari bought me flowers on her own birthday, just to make me smile. I forced a smile. I nodded like it didn't cut deep. Later, as plates were cleared, Calloway slipped beside me again, leaned down. "Don't test me too far," he said. "I know lawyers who'll bury you under paperwork until you forget what you were digging for." He placed his hand over mine, like it was care. But it felt like a collar. I looked at Esme. She didn't move, didn't blink. He stood straight. "Enjoy dessert, Sable." Esme wasn't done. As the chocolate tart came out, she spoke up, raising her wine. "You never really belonged, Sable. You were always trying to be like her. It must have been hard, watching her shine." People stopped chewing. I could feel my jaw clench. "I loved her," I said flat. "That's different than envy." She blinked. No apology, just silence. Lenore tried to change the subject with a smile, but the air was thick now. Everyone knew this wasn't about dessert. I let myself drift inside for a minute. This wasn't a reunion, it was reconnaissance. I scanned the faces. Lenore's smile held strain. Jasper wouldn't meet my eyes. Verity barely touched her food. I reached into my coat pocket. My fingers brushed Mari's hairpin. She'd worn it every time she wanted to feel strong. I held it tight like a vow. I wouldn't be shut out again. The night dragged on, guests starting to trickle toward coats and goodbyes. I stayed seated. Then I noticed the napkin at Mari's place. I picked it up. There, smudged in blue ink. "We were sisters. Don't let him erase me." I looked up, the words echoing in my head. Outside, past the lawn, just beyond the hedges, a shape, tall, still, watching. Then it stepped forward, into the silver wash of moonlight. A voice, soft, low. "Sable." I awoke before dawn, gaze fixed on the ceiling. The napkin's words swirled in my mind. "We were sisters. Don't let him erase me." My phone glowed with a glitchy doorcam snapshot, just black, then static. Time-stamped exactly midnight. No movement. Nothing. No proof someone was there. It gnawed me. They want me to think I'm unraveling. That's how they win. I slipped the napkin into my coat pocket, silent resolve forming. Today, I'd demand answers from someone I once trusted. I found Verity's studio tucked between storefronts, windows blank with paint drips. Inside, gray shadows and half-done canvases filled the air with cold quiet. Verity stood behind an easel, palette in hand, waiting. She offered tea, her tone soft. I sat in silence first, letting the hours settle between us. Then I placed the broken necklace and that inked napkin where she couldn't miss them. Her hand froze mid-brushstroke. She set down her tool. Her eyes flicked to the window. The air felt tight. I looked her straight in the eye. "You knew he was hurting her, didn't you?" My voice didn't shake. She stuttered, looked away. I thought she'd tell me." "You didn't just turn away. You helped him keep her quiet." Her frame trembled, her voice cracked. She confessed she'd been blackmailed, tax documents in his hands, threats she could never speak of. "I didn't choose him," she said. "I just didn't know how to fight him." Her confession hung heavy. Betrayal mingled with sorrow in the dusty air. I stood, disappointed more than furious. "I'm not mad you were scared. I'm mad you let me walk blind into the same trap." She begged me. "Let this die. Mari wouldn't want you destroyed too." I closed my eyes. When I opened them, I snapped, "Mari's dead. That tells me exactly what she would want." I turned and walked toward the door. My heart felt numb, but my purpose sharpened. Home felt colder. In the kitchen, I spread everything across the table. Photos, the USB, the napkin, the trom hairpin, papers, the broken necklace. Night stretched. I watched the drive glow in my hand, encrypted, unreadable. I opened my laptop, searched for decryption tools. I texted a friend in Boston working in digital forensics, asking for help. Out loud, I said, "I don't want revenge. I want release. For her and for me." My resolve settled. I would move forward with strategy, not desperation. That evening, my phone buzzed. Unknown number. You should have left it alone. Then lights out. The house fell silent. I froze in the dark. A flicker of flame. Someone outside the window. Not Calloway, Jasper. His face there for a heartbeat, then gone. When the lights went out, it wasn't just the apartment that went dark. It was like something in me shut off, too. I sat still for a beat, then got up and lit 3 candles, placing them near the windows and corners. I couldn't shake the feeling I wasn't alone. And then, through the dim reflection on the window, I saw him. Jasper. Just standing there outside, in the faint glow of a distant street lamp, like he didn't have a single care in the world. He didn't wave, didn't try to come up. He just stood still, then walked off like he had delivered a message without speaking. My breath caught. Was he trying to help me or scare me? My phone blinked red once, then died. No way to call. No charger. I scribbled in the corner of my journal. Backup burner. Extra candles. Stay alert. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I dragged a pillow into the hallway, locked every door, and stayed curled near the wall with 1 candle burning low. By morning, the silence was replaced by a knock. Not frantic, steady. Jasper stood there with 2 black coffees and 0 apologies. Verity talked, he said like he was reading a weather report. That USB was supposed to disappear. He stepped in like he owned the place, set the coffees down. Years ago, I tried to tell the truth about Calloway. I lost everything. He made sure no one believed me. I didn't say a word. I just waited. Mari sent me something, he continued, voice quieter now. I didn't open it. Couldn't. I was scared. But you're doing what I couldn't. He pulled out a small flash drive from his pocket. Email backups, from when Mari was still alive. She was digging deep, right before everything went to hell. I stared at the drive. What if it's nothing? He gave me a look I won't forget. Then at least we'll know. But I don't think it's nothing. He left without finishing his coffee. I sat there, the drive in my palm, the weight of it heavier than I could explain. Later that afternoon, I went to a small cafe a few blocks down, one of those places with creaky floors and chipped mugs. I opened my laptop, called Eli, my old tech friend from Boston. I need you to look at something, I said, sharing my screen. He leaned in, eyes narrowing. This encryption isn't amateur stuff. This is someone with resources. I sent over screenshots of the wooden box before it vanished and told him about the sticker I'd found days ago. They're watching you, he said flat. I didn't respond, just looked up and saw him. Not Eli. A man in the corner. Too warm for a day like this. Coat zipped to the top, no drink in front of him. Eyes never leaving my table. I didn't wait. Closed the laptop, shoved it in my bag, and left. Outside, the breeze hit like a slap. I rushed to my car and froze. Another sticker. Right on my windshield. Silence is a gift. My hands were shaking now, but not from fear. Anger. White-hot, electric. I peeled the sticker slowly, like it was toxic. Folded it, pocketed it. They wanted silence. They were going to get noise. Evening settled in heavy. I had just started jotting notes when the knock came again. This time, it was 2 police officers, badges out, voices firm. Ma'am, we need to ask you about an incident at the Calloway estate. I blinked. I haven't stepped near that place. They didn't care, said I was being accused of harassment, trespassing. I laughed, but it sounded too thin. He's setting me up, I said. But they were already reading me my rights. My neighbors watched from cracked doors. Someone even pulled out a phone. I kept my head up. No tears, just walked with them to the car. At the precinct, the air felt colder than outside. Sterile. Everything smelled like bleach and fear. They put me in a small room with peeling paint and 1 chair. Asked me the same things over and over. I said nothing. I wasn't about to play into their game. When my lawyer arrived, finally, he pulled the door shut behind him, looked tired. There's no evidence. They're fishing. But it's working. They're building a case in the shadows. I was released with a warning. Stay away from the Drakes. I didn't answer. Just walked out with my chin up and fists clenched. Back home, I cleared the table and laid everything out. The sticker, the napkin with the code, the flash drive, Verity's confession, Jasper's email. I grabbed a pen, started sketching a timeline. Dates, names, every move Calloway had made. If I fall, I whispered, he falls harder. That was it for me. No more defense. I was going on offense now. The email from Jasper sat in my inbox like a dare. The subject line read, "Open if anything happens to me." I clicked it. A video began. Mari appeared, sitting on a bed, the camera wobbling slightly. Her face was swollen. Eyes red, bruises on her arm. "If you're watching this," she began, her voice trembling, "he finally did it." The message blinked on my phone just as dusk deepened. "Meet me in the living room at 9 p.m. I slid the tram into my pocket, heart pounding, and gathered every scrap of proof I carried, USBs, napkin, photos, into a slim folder. I rehearsed the questions I'd ask. By 8:50, I stood in the foyer of the Drake estate, cold air pressing in. The staff hushed in corners, portraits stared down. The place smelled of polished wood and secrets kept too long. Down the hall, Calloway waited beneath low light, Lenore beside him, expression steady. My hands trembled, but I walked forward. Lenore stood before I could speak. Her voice was sharp, but measured. "I deserve to know what you've been accusing him of." She lifted a photograph, one of Mari and me as children, arms linked, smiles bright. Gasps rippled through the assembled guests. She wasn't the silent spouse anymore. A flicker of betrayal laced her posture as she held that image between us. Surprise cut through me. This wasn't just a show. It was a stake in truth. Calloway nodded toward the wall, and a screen flickered to life behind him. He pressed a remote. A video began. Mari confronting Calloway about money, betrayal, hidden accounts. His response was cold, dismissive. Then the image rewound, and Mari held the tram, tears in her eyes. "She recorded herself before she died," Calloway said, voice low. "Explains a lot, doesn't it?" The room swayed. My heart stopped. My breath came in short gasps. Half of me wanted to deny it, but the look in my bones told me I'd been right. He leaned forward. "You must drop this, Sable. Stop digging, or I'll release the full version to the press and expose every rift in this family." Lenore nodded. "There's nothing left to heal if we let this carry on," she added gently, but her eyes were hard. Jasper stood silent. Verity held her hands to her lips. The walls seemed to press in on me. The implication was clear. If I continued, I'd burn us all. Public humiliation, family ruin. I could see the trap. I stood, my voice even but fierce. "You gave me a video that proves revenge. I'll give you one that proves your crimes." I pressed play on a USB I'd kept hidden. On the screen, DVR footage from Calloway's private office, him admitting to burning Mari's documents, deleting files, suppressing proof. The room froze. Calloway's smirk faltered. Lenore's face turned pale. The gasps echoed in the grand room. I held the silence, letting that footage sit between us. Undeniable, sharp, dangerous. Suddenly, darkness swallowed the room. The lights snapped off. Panic roared. Chairs scraped. A deep voice echoed, "You just called in the storm." Then lights returned, and Calloway was gone. Lenore stood speechless, staring at me. On the table, a phone buzzed. Unknown number. Its screen flashed. "You'll regret this." The news alert hit before sunrise. A local jogger had found something strange near the banks, an old wooden box, half submerged, mud-slicked and barely latched. I saw the still frame on my phone. There it was, unmistakably the same box I'd once held in my hands. I didn't wait. I drove out fast, ignoring every red light on the way. The sun was just peeking over the river when I got there. The jogger was gone, but the box, still resting against a tangle of roots, as if the river had changed its mind. I pulled gloves from my bag and knelt. The latch creaked open. Inside were fragments of truth no one wanted seen, burned edges of photos. One of them showed Mari with her head turned, laughing. Her necklace, torn journal entries, and then, in the corner, a thick, muddy envelope. It read, in her handwriting, "If he touches my sister." I felt a shiver slide down my spine. "She knew," I whispered. "She knew I'd come looking." I didn't go home. I went straight to Verity's apartment. As she opened the door in a robe, startled, but the sight of the box in my hands erased any pleasantries, I walked past her into the kitchen. "I need the truth. All of it." She stared at the box, then sank onto a chair. "Mari was planning to leave him," she finally said. "Weeks before she died, she had a safe deposit box, not under the Drake name, under her maiden name. I didn't open it. I thought it wasn't my place." "Now?" I asked. She nodded, eyes filling. "Now I know I should have helped you from the beginning." We made a plan to go together, today. But before I left, I asked one last question. "Why didn't you say anything?" Verity looked away. "Because I didn't believe she'd die. I thought she'd get out." At home, I placed the envelope on my kitchen table. It took a while before I opened it. My hands weren't steady. Inside was a letter. Written to me. Mari's voice came through every word, half apology, half warning. She talked about the fear. About how Calloway controlled everything, her bank accounts, her phone, even her medicine. She suspected he was slipping things into her tea. She wrote, "If you find this, I'm probably gone. But you're braver than I ever was. Please don't stop." I cried, but not like before. These weren't grief tears. They were the sound of something cracking open inside me. I wasn't doing this just for her anymore. I was doing this for me. By late afternoon, someone else showed up. Lenore. She didn't knock. She just walked in like she owned the place. Neat blouse, not a hair out of place. She stood by my dining table, saw the letter, the box, then looked at me and said, "You've become a problem." She held out a check. Blank. "Take this and leave town. You've had your moment." I didn't take it. I just stared at her. "Did you know what your son did to Mari?" She didn't flinch, just folded the check and set it on the table. "What we can't fix, we bury." I picked up the check, tore it straight down the middle. "Then you'll have to bury me too." She left without another word. Just before nightfall, Verity met me outside the police station. She held the USB in one hand, the envelope in the other. We walked in together. I handed everything over, photos, journals, letter, footage. A female officer took our statement. Older woman. Wore her badge like it had meaning. After I finished, she looked me in the eye and said, "I buried my sister too. Took me 30 years to speak up." I nodded, not out of thanks, but understanding. Mari wasn't gone. She was loud now, through me. Later that night, I parked in front of my building and immediately knew something was wrong. The hallway was too quiet. My front door, slightly ajar. I slipped inside, heart steady, eyes scanning. There on the floor was a single feather, from Mari's dreamcatcher, and next to it, a torn photo of us as kids. My half was missing. From the hallway, a whisper crept in. "She's next." They found him upriver. The news came in quietly, like a whisper that spread fast anyway. Calloway's remains were recovered in a small cove, not far from that bridge where I first saw him toss the box. The police called it a suicide, but after the evidence I turned in, they reopened Mari's file. Now her death was being labeled suspicious. Lenore vanished from public view. Her silence was louder than any statement. The Drake estate is under investigation. I walked out of the precinct not with a victory parade, but with a strange peace. Justice doesn't always look like handcuffs. Sometimes, it's survival. Verity met me after. She handed me something wrapped in soft cloth, the repaired dreamcatcher from Mari's room. She said quietly, "She said it would only work if it hung over someone brave." I placed it above my bed, not as superstition, but as memory, as proof that I carried her light. Verity is moving to Seattle, starting over. We hugged inside her apartment, silent, the kind of quiet that means I saved what remained of her, to some part of both of us. I commissioned a bench by the river, carved into its edge, Mari A. Row. Locals leave flowers and notes. One morning, I found a card. She helped me once. I never forgot. I sat there, pressed my fingers into the wood. I remember Mari pulling me away from trouble when we were kids, shielding me, keeping me safe. Maybe it was her way of teaching me to fight. A tear came, but it wasn't loss. It was release. While unpacking boxes at home, I discovered an envelope slipped behind Mari's books. It wasn't addressed to me, it was addressed to Verity. Inside was a letter Mari had written, confessing fears she never said aloud. She thanked Verity for being her mirror and her bravest friend. If I don't make it, she'd written, tell Sable I'm proud of her. Tell her she was always the one who saw clearly. I held it tight, then handed it to Verity at the airport. We hugged, no words needed. The next morning, I volunteered at a women's shelter. I led a small support group called Safe Return. A woman walked in with bruises on her arms. When I stood to speak, I said, "No one here is going to silence you." Outside, fall leaves danced in the wind, the same season Mari died. I walked away from that building, alone but not lonely, because now I know I'm not the only one who carries weight. Back at home, I poured tea in the quiet evening. The dream catcher above my bed swayed gently, though no breeze moved. I smiled. I know you're watching. I stood by the window. On the bench by the river, someone sat. I blinked, and they were gone.